I found something in our garage that made my blood run cold, and it wasn't what I expected. Let me back up. My life seemed ordinary enough on the surface. I spent most of my time at sea as captain of a fishing vessel, navigating the Pacific waters off the Oregon coast. The work was hard, the hours brutal, and I'd be gone for weeks at a stretch. Sometimes we'd chase salmon runs up north, other times we'd spend days hunting for albacore tuna in the deeper waters. The ocean was unpredictable, dangerous, and utterly unforgiving. I'd seen storms that could flip a boat, waves that towered 3 stories high, and equipment failures that could end lives in seconds. But it paid the bills and gave us a comfortable life in our house near the harbor. The house itself was special to me. I'd bought it with money from my father's life insurance after he passed, 5 years before I even met Cecilia. It was a modest 2-story craftsman-style home, with a view of the harbor from the upstairs windows. On clear days, I could watch the boats coming in and out, see the gulls circling the docks. My father would have loved it. My wife stayed home. We'd talked about her finding work, but she always said she was looking, always had an excuse ready. The market was tough. She wasn't qualified for much. She was waiting to hear back from places. She wanted to take some online courses first. The excuses changed, but the result was always the same. She stayed home while I worked myself to exhaustion on the cold, unforgiving sea. We'd been married for 12 years. 12 years of me working myself to exhaustion, while she enjoyed the life I provided. 12 years of coming home to a wife who seemed progressively more distant, more distracted, more absorbed in her phone and her own world. I'd attributed it to the natural ebb and flow of long-term relationships. People change, grow comfortable, settle into routines. I thought it was normal. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon. I'd come home early, we'd hit our quota faster than expected, and I was looking forward to surprising her. We'd pulled in nearly 10,000 pounds of albacore in just 8 days, which was exceptional. The crew was ecstatic. I'd paid them their shares with bonuses, and I drove home with actual excitement, something I hadn't felt in a while. I pulled into our driveway around 3 in the afternoon, already imagining her smile when she saw me. That's when our neighbor Ashley caught me. She was young, maybe 23, and lived 2 houses down with her parents. She was putting away groceries from her car when she spotted me. I'd always been polite but distant, proper boundaries and all that. I knew she worked late shifts at a diner downtown, often didn't get home until past midnight. I'd wave when I saw her, maybe exchange a comment about the weather, but nothing more. But that day, she approached me with something urgent in her eyes, something that made her hands shake as she set down her grocery bags. "Otto, can we talk?" she asked, her voice low, almost trembling. "Sure, what's up?" I tried to keep my tone casual, but something in her expression put me on edge. She bit her lip, looking genuinely uncomfortable. Her eyes darted to my house, then back to me. Then she said something that made my world tilt. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell you this. Look, I think you're a really attractive man, and I've had a crush on you for a while now. I was going to ask if maybe you wanted to get coffee sometime, but..." She paused, her face flushing deep red. "But you remember that I'm married?" I asked sharply. "Yes, of course. I just thought that if your wife allows herself to do that, then maybe you do too," she said hesitantly. "Sorry, that was stupid of me." I stared at her, confused. My mind was still on the successful fishing trip, on surprising Cecilia. "What are you talking about?" "Your wife, Otto. When you're away, she has men over. Different men. A lot of them. I've seen at least 4 different guys going in and out of your house over the past few months. I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I didn't know how, and I wasn't sure if maybe you had some kind of arrangement. But then I thought you should know, you deserve to know." The world went silent. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, feel the ground swaying like I was still on deck in rough seas. The afternoon sun suddenly felt too bright, the air too thick. Ashley kept talking, but I could barely process the words. "You're sure?" I managed to ask, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. Ashley nodded, her eyes sympathetic and sad. "I wouldn't say anything if I wasn't. I see them when I'm coming home from my late shifts at the diner. Different cars in your driveway, guys leaving early in the morning. There's one guy in particular, drives a black BMW, comes at least twice a week. But there are others too. A red pickup truck, a silver sedan, even a motorcycle once. I thought you should know. I'm really sorry, Otto." I thanked her, somehow mechanically, my mouth forming words while my brain struggled to process what I'd just heard, and made my way inside. My legs felt wooden, disconnected from my body. I opened the door with my key, half expecting to find someone there, some concrete proof of what Ashley had just told me. Cecilia was in the living room, watching TV, completely relaxed. She was wearing yoga pants and one of my old t-shirts, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked comfortable, content, utterly at ease. She jumped when she saw me, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw something flash across her face. Fear? Guilt? But it was gone so quickly I almost thought I'd imagined it. "Otto, you're home early." Her smile seemed genuine, but now I was seeing everything through a different lens. Was that smile relief that I'd announced myself? Was she texting someone a warning before I came in? "Yeah, good fishing," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Thought I'd surprise you." "That's wonderful." She stood up and kissed my cheek. A perfunctory peck, nothing more. "I'm so glad you're home. How long do you have before you head out again?" The question that used to sound like concern now sounded like calculation. How long before she could resume her activities? We went through the motions of a normal evening, but my mind was racing. Every small thing took on new meaning. The way she kept her phone face down on the counter. How she'd angled the screen away from me when a notification came through. The expensive wine in the fridge that I didn't remember buying. The subtle scent of cologne in the hallway that definitely wasn't mine. Something woody and expensive, not the cheap drugstore stuff I wore. I needed proof. I needed to know for sure. Part of me wanted Ashley to be wrong, wanted there to be some innocent explanation. But a larger part of me, the part that had learned to read the ocean's moods and trust my instincts, knew she was telling the truth. The next morning, I told Cecilia I'd been called back to the boat, equipment issues that needed the captain's attention. She barely looked up from her phone as she kissed me goodbye, already absorbed in whatever conversation she was having. Instead of going to the harbor, I drove to Portland and found a specialty electronics store tucked away in a strip mall. The place looked sketchy from the outside, but inside it was filled with surveillance equipment, security systems, and technology one didn't fully understand. I bought the smallest, most discreet camera system I could find, something that could be hidden and would stream directly to my phone. The guy behind the counter, a thin man with tired eyes who'd probably seen too many stories like mine, asked no questions, just showed me how to set it up. "Motion activated," he said, demonstrating on a tablet. "Streams to an app on your phone, saves to cloud storage. Night vision, clear audio up to 20 feet. You'll know everything that happens." Everything that happens. The words echoed in my mind as I drove home. I installed it that afternoon in the garage, angled perfectly to capture the side door that led into the house. It was the entrance Cecilia always used, the one that wasn't visible from the street, the one that offered privacy from neighbors. I mounted the tiny camera inside an old toolbox on a high shelf, positioned so it looked like just another piece of garage clutter, but had a perfect view of the door. Then I actually did go back to the boat, told my crew I needed to handle some business, and waited. I didn't have to wait long. That very evening, around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app and watched as a man I'd never seen before pulled into my driveway. He was tall, well-dressed, looked to be in his 30s. He walked right up to that side door like he owned the place. Cecilia opened it before he could knock, and the way she kissed him, hungry, passionate, nothing like the perfunctory pecks she gave me, told me everything I needed to know. I watched them go inside. I sat there in the captain's quarters, staring at my phone, feeling something inside me break and then freeze over. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything. The same man came back 3 more times. I later learned his name was James. But he wasn't alone. There were others. A different man on Thursday. Another on Saturday afternoon. A younger guy on Monday, who couldn't have been more than 25. I started to recognize a pattern. James seemed to be the regular, the one who stayed longest, who Cecilia greeted most warmly. The others were what? Variety? Entertainment? It didn't matter. Each one was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. But I noticed something else too. Something that made my stomach turn. Cecilia looked different in these videos. Happier. More alive than I'd seen her in years. She laughed more, moved differently, seemed like a completely different person than the bored, restless woman who barely looked up when I came home. On my 3rd week back at sea, I got a motion alert at 2 in the morning. James again. This time, I watched the footage the next morning and heard something through the audio that made me set down my coffee cup with shaking hands. "I told you I took care of it," Cecilia was saying as they stood by his car, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet night air. "I couldn't risk it. Can you imagine if Otto found out I was pregnant? He'd want to know why I suddenly wanted a baby after 12 years. James pulled her close. Are you sure you're okay? That couldn't have been easy. I'm fine. It was early enough that it was just a pill. Besides, I wasn't about to ruin my life with a baby. This is working perfectly as it is. I had to leave the captain's quarters and stand on deck, letting the cold ocean air hit my face. She'd been pregnant, with another man's child, and she'd ended it, not out of any moral consideration, but because it would have been inconvenient. Would have exposed her. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be a simple divorce. I started planning. I documented every single visitor, every time James came over, every lingering goodbye. I backed everything up to 3 different cloud services. I took screenshots, downloaded videos, organized them by date and time. I had a record of at least 7 different men over a 5-week period. But I needed more than just evidence of infidelity. I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. I hired a private investigator, not for the affairs, I had that covered, but to dig into our finances. What I found stunned me. Cecilia had been spending money like water. Expensive dinners charged to our credit cards, dinners I'd assumed she was having with her friends. Hotel rooms in Portland. Shopping sprees. Over the past year, she'd burned through nearly $40,000 of our savings on her affairs. The investigator found something else too. James wasn't just some random affair. He was married, had 2 kids, worked as a sales manager at a car dealership in Portland. And from what the investigator could tell, Cecilia wasn't his only side piece. I sat with all this information, feeling the weight of it. 12 years of marriage, reduced to folders of video files and bank statements. But more than betrayal, I felt anger. Cold, calculated anger. She'd used me. Used my long absences to build an entire secret life. She'd gotten pregnant by another man, ended that pregnancy without a second thought, and continued on like nothing had happened. She'd spent our money I earned in dangerous, exhausting work, to wine and dine her affairs. And she thought she'd gotten away with it. I scheduled a meeting with the best divorce attorney in Portland. Margaret Chin had a reputation for being ruthless and brilliant. I showed her everything. This is comprehensive, she said, scrolling through my documentation. Almost obsessively so. How long have you been gathering this? 5 weeks. But I need to know, what's the best way to handle this? Margaret leaned back in her chair, studying me. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, so the affairs themselves won't matter much in the divorce proceedings. However, she smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant smile. The financial infidelity is another matter entirely. She's been spending marital assets on extramarital affairs. That's dissipation of marital assets, and we can absolutely use that against her. What about the house? You said you owned it before the marriage? Yes. I bought it with money from my father's life insurance. 5 years before I met Cecilia. Then it's your separate property. She has no claim to it. The only marital assets are your savings and the boat, which is part of your business. Given her dissipation of assets, I can build a strong case for you to retain virtually everything. Good, I said. But I want more than that. Margaret raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? James is married. I want his wife to know. And I want Cecilia to understand exactly what she's losing. I can't advise you on the first part from a legal standpoint, but the second. Margaret smiled again. Leave that to me. We spent the next 2 weeks building an airtight case. Margaret was thorough to a fault. She had the videos professionally authenticated, documented every penny Cecilia had spent, and built a timeline that showed a pattern of calculated deception. Meanwhile, I did some investigating of my own. I found James's wife, Linda, on social media. She looked happy in her photos, surrounded by her 2 young kids, completely unaware that her husband was spending his evenings with my wife. I created an anonymous email account and sent her everything. Every video of James arriving at my house, every timestamp, every piece of evidence. I included a simple message. I thought you deserved to know the truth about your husband. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you. I just found out about my own wife's affairs, and I wouldn't want you to be kept in the dark the way I was. I hit send and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt. Just cold purpose. 3 days later, I came home, unexpectedly again. This time, I had Margaret with me along with a process server. We walked into my house at 2 in the afternoon. Cecilia was on the couch, on her phone, laughing at something. She looked up, saw me, and her face went pale. Otto, what are you? Who are these people? Cecilia, I said calmly, This is Margaret Chin, my attorney. And this gentleman is here to serve you with divorce papers. She stood up, her phone clattering to the floor. What? Divorce? Are you insane? The process server handed her the papers. She took them with shaking hands, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You can read them carefully, Margaret said in a professional tone. But the summary is this. Otto is filing for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences. He's seeking to retain all separate property, including this house, which he owned prior to the marriage. He's also seeking reimbursement for approximately $40,000 in marital assets that you spent on extramarital affairs. Cecilia's face went from pale to red. Extramarital? What are you talking about? Otto, I don't know what she's told you, but… James, I said simply. And Marcus. And Tyler. And David. Should I go on? I have video of all of them, Cecilia. Hours and hours of video. I know about the pregnancy. I know about the abortion. I know everything. She sank back onto the couch, the papers falling from her hands. For a moment, she looked like she might cry, but then her expression hardened. You spied on me? You invaded my privacy? I installed a camera in my own garage, I said. Perfectly legal in Oregon, by the way. One-party consent state for video surveillance of your own property. Margaret stepped forward. Mrs. Mueller, I'd advise you to retain legal counsel. You have 30 days to respond to the petition. Fair warning, we have extensive documentation of your affairs and your spending. If you contest this divorce or make unreasonable demands, we'll ensure that every piece of evidence becomes part of the public record. We left her there, sitting in my house, soon to be just my house again, surrounded by the wreckage of her lies. The fallout was spectacular. James's wife, Linda, filed for divorce within a week. Apparently, my evidence dump had revealed not just the affair with Cecilia, but 2 other women as well. Linda took him for everything. His lawyer told my lawyer that she was absolutely ruthless in the proceedings. James lost his house, most of his savings, and barely got visitation with his kids. He also lost his job. Turns out, one of his other affairs had been with a co-worker, and when his divorce became workplace gossip, the dealership decided his conduct unbecoming violated his employment contract. Cecilia tried to fight the divorce at first. She hired a lawyer, contested the asset division, claimed I was being unreasonable. But Margaret had built an impenetrable case. Every time Cecilia's lawyer tried to argue for a share of the house or the boat, Margaret would calmly present more evidence of dissipated assets. Your client spent $43,700 of marital savings on her affairs, Margaret said in one particularly brutal deposition. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts for her various partners. She terminated a pregnancy that resulted from an extramarital affair without informing my client. She systematically deceived her husband for at least 6 months, and likely longer. Under Oregon law, when one spouse deliberately dissipates marital assets, the court can award the innocent spouse a greater share of the remaining assets. My client is being more than generous by simply asking for what's rightfully his. Cecilia's lawyer had no response. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Cecilia got nothing. The house was mine, the boat was mine, and the remaining savings were mine. The judge even ordered her to pay half the legal fees, given that her contest of the divorce had been deemed frivolous. But the real revenge was slower, more insidious. Cecilia had built her entire life around being a housewife in a nice house, with plenty of money to spend. She'd never worked, never built any skills, never thought about what would happen if it all went away. Now it was gone. She moved in with her mother in a cramped apartment in Portland. She had to get a job, her first real job in over a decade, working retail at a department store. Her social media, which used to be full of brunch photos and shopping trips, went dark. James didn't take her back. Why would he? She was broke, homeless, and a reminder of everything he'd lost. None of her other affairs wanted anything to do with her either. Turns out, they'd been interested in the woman with the nice house and the free time, and the husband who was always away, not the broke, struggling woman working retail. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she tried to reach out to me a few times. Apologetic messages, claims that she'd made mistakes, that she wanted to talk. I blocked her every time. There was nothing she could say that I wanted to hear. As for me, I sold the house 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Too many bad memories, and honestly, it was too big for one person. I bought a smaller place closer to the harbor, put the rest of the money into expanding my business. Bought a second boat, hired another crew. Ashley, the young neighbor who'd told me the truth, stayed in touch. We started having coffee occasionally, just friendly at first, but there was potential there. She was honest, straightforward, working hard to save money for nursing school. Everything Cecilia wasn't. I'm not rushing into anything. 12 years of marriage taught me to be careful, to watch for red flags, to protect myself. But it's nice to know there are still honest people in the world. The boats are doing well. Better than ever, actually. Turns out, when you're not supporting someone else's secret life, money goes a lot further. I've even started enjoying being home, enjoying the quiet of my new place, enjoying the simple pleasure of knowing that everything in my life is exactly what it appears to be. Sometimes I think about Cecilia, wonder if she ever truly understood what she threw away. But mostly, I don't think about her at all. She wanted the excitement of affairs, the thrill of deception, the pleasure of living a double life. She got it for a while. But every choice has consequences, and hers finally caught up with her. I'm the one who ended up free. I rebuilt my life on my own terms. I kept what was mine, and I made sure that everyone who needed to know the truth knew it. Some people might say I went too far, that sending the evidence to James's wife was cruel, that destroying Cecilia's comfortable life was excessive. But I don't see it that way. I see it as justice. Not the legal kind that comes from judges and courtrooms, but the natural kind that comes from truth and consequences. Cecilia made her choices. She chose to betray me, chose to spend our money on her affairs, chose to get pregnant by another man and hide it, chose to build an elaborate lie that required my absence and my ignorance to survive. I just chose to stop being absent and stop being ignorant. And in the end, that made all the difference. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.